Mike Sobel, and Mike is environmental impact biologist from the Environmental Protection Division, Ministry of Environment, Penticton. And Mike is going to talk to us today about his sampling results. And so, Mike, if we could make sure you use a microphone too. Oh, you can try.
I will try without. So, okay. Can everybody hear me?
Can't hear him. Please let us know.
Yeah, just raise your hand if you can't hear me. I'll try and project. I don't quite have Dave's lungs, so I'll try my best. Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for coming. This is my third time here at this meeting, and it's great to see so many people here, so many people involved, and it's just really is wonderful. And hopefully more groups like this in the Okanagan, where I live, can form and develop and just get bigger and better. So kudos to all of you. So we're going to go over the 2011 results. So from we started sampling in March of this year and finished up in what would have been late September, but there was a slight delay, so it was the first week of October. But essentially spring, and then we did some summer work, and then into the fall. So generally, the goals of the sampling program are to provide water quality data of the large lakes. It says Okanagan region on there, but that was just from a previous slide that I slipped up on that one. But the Christina Lake sampling here is part of a larger program that's done throughout the Okanagan Basin and also the Upper Chute Lake. So we've got these three main areas here. So we're providing data to a variety of interested people and groups. So we're assessing the status and trends in lake water quality in response to various changes that are going on. So this is both natural change and also anthropogenic or human-induced change. And we're comparing these water quality status and parameters to water quality objectives, which are key to determining trophic status and also more broadly just lake health. What are water quality objectives? So this year we did extra sampling throughout the summer, which we normally don't do. So the stewardship group here does this sampling for secondary temperature throughout the summer when we can't make it up. But this year we're actually here once every month to look at attainment of these objectives. So last time it was done was in 2006. And looking at some of the seasonal data, because certain parameters are better to look at in the spring, certain ones are better to look at in the fall, and other ones you get seasonal averages throughout the growing season. So that's why we were here more often. So these are site-specific objectives that were developed in 1994 for Christina Lake by the Ministry of Environment at the time. And there's a variety of parameters that if we're meeting those levels, then we should be at a good healthy state in the lake. So the two main stations that we look at are one in the North Basin and one in the South Basin. So the key parameters here are nutrients, so nitrogen and phosphorus, and that relates to plankton, so the plant life growing within the water column. You can look at chlorophyll A, which is a pigment that they all have. It's a you can understand their biomass and how much there actually is in there by looking at the amount of pigment in there. Also water clarity using a Secchi disc, dissolved oxygen and temperature, so surface and at depth as well, so we look at profiles throughout the water column. And then there's also the bi-weekly sampling that the stewardship group does, which is really invaluable to us because we can't make it up here. So we'll look at some long-term trends, the current status for this year, and I did briefly mention what the attainments was all about. So it is on a 5-year rotating schedule. So if the water quality from early on when the program started in the early 90s, if the water quality was a bit on the poor side, it would have been a little bit more frequent. But since the water quality generally has been quite good for a long time, this 5-year period before more intensive sampling makes sense. So the photo on there just shows the McCrae Creek slide in the spring of 2006. So that was just one example of a large nutrient input to the lake, but that was a natural slide. So generally, if you look at the pie graph there, it just shows you the phosphorus load estimates that are actually coming into the lake, and the vast majority of that is natural sources. So 2/3 of it comes from the surrounding watershed, from the creeks, and also from the atmosphere itself. And phosphorus is the key nutrient determining generally water quality, but also growth of plant life, which has an effect throughout the entire water quality. So this graph here shows the total phosphorus at the south site, not too far from here. So this is just a trend over time. So you'll notice that these kind of a 10-year oscillation, and that's generally reflecting seasonal climatic variation. There is a lot of noise in the data just for certain events, wind events, storm events, mixing, that sort of thing. But we're looking at the value there of 10 or so for this past spring. So it is higher than that red line, which is the objective. But as you can see from the previous 6 or 7 years, the lake is on an upward swing. So it's not to say that things are getting worse. It's likely due to natural climate variability. So things have been higher. It's within the range of natural variability, but that's just what it is. And there isn't an objective for fall, and that's just simply due to the fact that the spring value was chosen as the objective because it's a determining factor when the entire water column is all mixed in the spring. That'll determine how things set up for the rest of the year. So it is a little bit higher than previous years, but again, I think it's following an upward trend, which is part of this natural climatic variability that we do see in the Okanagan and the Upper Shuswap, even in other parts of the province. And in the north site, sort of right spot on at 7, but again, it's following a similar trend. The record doesn't go back as far as the south site, but it follows the same trends. Again, ball value there, within the same stuff. So this here is the phytoplankton chlorophyll. So this is the mostly microscopic algae living in the water. So values have been fairly steady for the past few decades, and especially over the past 10 years or so, it's been quite stable. So just in that bottom graph there, 2006 was the last time we actually looked at the seasonal values, which is part of the attainment work, and it's in 91, 92, 94, 06, and this past year, fairly similar. So even though the amount of nutrients in the lake does vary quite a bit, there are other factors that influence the plant life and water clarity and that sort of thing. So far we're looking pretty good. So for second depth here, you want to be, that was set at 10 meters or greater, so you want to have good visibility, and that's influenced by what's actually growing in the water and also physical turbidity. So it does change quite a bit, but it's key to look at the seasonal averages. And when we're not here, this is when the stewardship information is really helpful. So you can see there's an upswing. Okay, so yeah, so we just take the spring and the fall, and there's a lot of points in between that we get quite a bit of help on. So the change from that early spring or in late winter sample increases quite a bit. So the increase is actually a decrease in water clarity. So this is from an increase in algae. So you have increased nutrients, you have increased growth. There's also physical turbidity, so you have flow coming in from the creeks. In this past year, there was in the spring when we were visiting, you guys would like to know there was a lot of debris in the lake in May and June. There's some massive logs that they're just huge anyways, and a lot of pollen as well. So there were quite a few things coming into the lake this year. So water clarity was reduced quite a bit, but then as the season progressed, it got better and better, and by the late summer, early fall, back to what most of you likely remember in the previous years. So again, it's a little zooplankton there. So when you have an increase in the plant life, you have a subsequent increase in the microscopic animal life, choose everything down, and also a decrease in. So comparatively, it's not out of the range of natural variability in the past several years, but it is. It didn't meet that attainment result. I don't think it's really anything to be worried about. I think it's just one of those years as 2008 and 2006 where things where increased flows caused decreased turbidity. So it's just a couple of photos here. There's the large pollen blooms, and there's I don't know if you can see it on that top photo there, a massive log coming in. So these things all have to do with decreasing water clarity and increasing the rains and that sort of thing. So these are some messy graphs here, but just want to show you a couple of the trends.
Can everyone hear them?
So the
seems to be pretty quiet.
The dissolved oxygen. Oxygen is important in water for primarily fish, but also other aquatic life. So the objective was set at 8 milligrams per liter of dissolved oxygen at any depth. There is a slight problem with that, is that when that objective was set, they never went below 25 meters to set it. So everything that we've seen in late August and through September, the dissolved oxygen levels do get lower towards the bottom. And that's just because things that are living in the upper parts of the water settle out, and things will decompose, and it's using up oxygen at those bottom waters. So the good thing is that fish rarely frequent those bottom waters, and then they'll go where the best suitable habitat is. So right where those peaks are, between say about 8 meters to about 15 meters or so. If you're a fisherman, that's where you want to focus your efforts. That's where you have the most oxygen, it's where you have the most life, and for the better part of the year, that's where fish are going to be. So those lower waters, that 8 milligrams per liter, I'm considering changing with the new evidence that we have, is that it should be 8 milligrams per liter at about 30 meters and above. So something that I'm working on. This is just over the years, again, similar patterns, and those bottom samples there, bottom waters, have lower oxygen, but it's not as if it's going anoxic and it's devoid of oxygen, it's just low. Temperature, the lake follows a seasonal temperature trend, so the first one there in the spring is just the whole water column's mix. The temperature is fairly steady. As the season progresses, the upper layers get warmer, but the bottom layers stay pretty well at the same temperature, just the warming of the lake, and you have that kind of stratified layers. So you have warmer at the top portion. If you dive down, you get that sharp decrease in colder water. It's just a natural event. Okay, so we're looking at water quality attainment here. So these are some of the main values for water quality attainment that we have. So they're both exactly the same for the north and south. And again, these were developed in '94. Some with what I would call maybe not complete data, so things can be updated because we do have a larger data set now. So those pink values are the ones that the objectives have not been met, but as I previously mentioned, it really isn't a cause for concern. The bottom waters we just went over, that one will likely be changed. The spring TP value there in the south, it's the same value as last year, even though it really didn't make the cut as far as the attainment goes. I think it's just a natural progression over the past 6 or 7 years. And for second depth, it also didn't meet it in both cases. But that was likely due to the higher runoff and higher turbidity conditions throughout the lake. So just kind of give you a snapshot of what's actually going on. And comparatively, from the last time we did to 2006, it's fairly similar. The nutrient levels were a little bit lower, but again, that was just on that bottom part of the graph where the nutrient levels were at their lowest in the past 20 years, and then things have kind of moved back up. So another part of the attainment is looking at periphyton. Periphyton is the attached algae or slime growing on the rock. So when you're out in the lake and you see that it's kind of green fuzz, or sometimes long filaments, hopefully not too much long filaments, then that's the periphyton growing on there. And if you were to take a bottle of water from the near shore and the bottle of water taken from the center of the lake, they're 99% of the time they'll be exactly the same. So the nearshore environment is representative of what's actually going on the shoreline itself. So any development or a runoff coming in will affect what's going on. But taking that water bottle there is just a snapshot in time and doesn't really provide a good integration of what's actually going on. So looking at the algal communities that are growing along the shoreline can provide a good interpretation of throughout that growing season, what's actually coming off the landscape, if it's a slow seapool, and then how it influences the algae growing there. So we looked at it at a variety of sites. These are the same sites that we've done in 2006, and previously to that, I know the Stewardship Society has done some periphyton sampling as well. And we're looking at chlorophyll A, which is the pigment that was in it, so it's a general indication of how much is actually there. And we also did taxonomy, but unfortunately the taxonomy results are still at the lab and they haven't gotten those results yet. So when we do get those results, they'll be posted on our website and the information will be available. And it gives more of a holistic approach, like a whole picture of what's actually going on. So instead of knowing just maybe how much is there, looking at different species, like certain species will be indicative of different things. So it'll give us more of a picture of what's going on. So just a few photos here of the sampling we're doing in the middle of August. So just get right here. So this is just this is rock underneath here. This is all the algae growing on top of it. And this is just the sample we're using. So you put the suction cup on there. It has a little toothbrush on the end. You give it a few twirls, you suck it up, pull it up. Pretty low tech, but very effective. And because you know the known surface area of that bit of rock that you're scraping, you can calculate how much you actually have, and then from that, again, send samples off to the lab to see what's actually growing there. We do transects at these sites and do convoluted samples. So we're looking at cobble and boulder, and previous sampling has been done where you grab a rock, you take it out, and usually put a little cap on top of it, and scrub everything around it, and then underneath the cap is what you put into your container. But this way, it's in situ, you're not losing anything, it's a little bit more accurate, and it works quite well. So if you look at the objective of 10, this is way higher by a long shot than that objective. But this is where I was talking about incomplete data. So in 1994, when these objectives were developed, this one in particular, it wasn't done on natural substrates. There were plexiglass tiles that were set out into the lake, and then everything that was attaching to that was scraped off and used to determine that value. The unfortunate thing about that is that not everything sticks well to plexiglass. Certain species don't like growing in plexiglass, which makes sense. I've done various studies in the past looking at wood, various plastics, other things, but natural substrate is the best. So that really does underrepresent what's actually going on. So the values here are in line with some of the sites in Okanagan Lake, in Kawnalka Lake, some of the low nutrient lakes that are similar to Christina, not size, but in water quality. So if you look at the site up in the north end there, near those buoys that we saw, so that has the lowest amount of chlorophyll A, which is what we expected to see, just because there is, it's at the north end part. There aren't any high nutrient streams coming in, very little development, if any. And all the rest are all fairly similar, except for that 89 milligrams per liter. It's not way out of step. There are certain ones like in a Sirius Lake or in Wood Lake that are highly productive that have an order of magnitude higher growth on there. So, but it does show you the difference between the more kind of developed areas and the less developed areas. But if you look at the values compared to 2006, they're pretty well spot on. And if you average all those values across the lake, it's almost exactly the same. So there is little change in the amount of algae growing on the shore. The residents who actually have lakeshore properties may have anecdotal evidence about various growth or things have increased. That sort of thing, and that information is very helpful, and then it can guide future work. So if you guys do notice increases in attached algae, especially a long green filamentous stuff, a call to our office, an email, or contacting the stewardship group would be really helpful. And again, species composition, we'll be getting that back shortly, and it'll show us again a more whole approach and a clearer picture of what's actually going on. So looking ahead to next year, so next year we won't be doing the longer attainment work and the parasitic work. That'll be done in another 5 years, but we'll be doing our regular sampling as part of our regional work for the spring and fall sampling, and hopefully the stewardship group can continue the second temperature profiles, which is really helpful. So, the information will be posted on our website in the spring. Not sure about when I'm going to get to the updates for the attainment, likely within the next year or so. So overall, lake water quality hasn't significantly changed from last year. It hasn't even significantly changed from 2006. There are natural swings that are going on, but there doesn't seem to be a kind of a smoking gun for any one problem or another. It's just I think natural changes that are going on that we see. And thanks very much to the Stewardship Society and DCLSS as well. So my contact information is on there if you'd like to write that down, and give me a shout or send me an email if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks very much.
Are there any questions for Mike? Richard?
I'm sorry.
What was your website again? This is the Ministry of Environment?
I'm sorry?
Your website, is it through the Ministry of Environment?
Yeah, it's our website are very convoluted and hard as most government websites are. So the easiest way to find information and reports is to just go directly from Google and type in Ministry of Environment, Okanagan region, and water quality. You put in those, the first one should be our page, but it is part of the Ministry of Environment website. There's just a lot of clicking and a lot of figuring out to actually find where to go. Thank you.
Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of questions, Mike. First of all, definition of trophic.
What is it?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah, trophic status is a measure of the productivity of a lake. So you've got oligotropy on one end, which is low nutrients, low productivity, so lower amounts of the algae growing in the water. Just like this lake out here, just like Okanagan coming off the lake, Naval Lake up in the Shuswap, and then you've got the other end of the spectrum, which is eutrophic, which has much higher amounts of nutrients, higher amounts of algae growth, more productive systems, such as, Wood Lake used to be, but it is getting better. And then you have in between, which is kind of in the middle of the road. Okay,
so this is sort of like the fertilizer put into Kootenai Lake to promote the growth of trophy trout.
That's similar, but the one problem with that analysis is that that lake is on the oligotrophic side, so it has so few nutrients that it can't really support natural habitat there. So because of the dam impoundments, you're not getting a lot of the runoff, and things are settling out in front of the dam and not making it to the lake. So that was part of that.
The other question related to the phosphorus graphs. And on the data, you had a red square and a blue square or a gray square. And those were related to
the upper waters and lower waters.
All right, so there was sort of a depth, 10 and 30?
Yeah.
And so does that mean that there's a sampling done at 10-meter depth and another sample point at 30-meter depth?
Close to it, but we do integrated sampling. So we do, for the what's called the epilumnion, which is the upper surface water, we do a composite sample of 1 meter, 5 meter, and 10 meter. And then we put that into sample containers. And then below that, we do 20 meters, 32 meters, and 45 meters for the deeper site, and then for the shallow site, it's that. So it's just looking at the separate upper and bottom waters.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I swim in the lake and I drink water out of the lake, and you didn't mention too much about bacterial counts, types of bacteria, and possible disease bacteria. Is the lake safe for drinking water without it being treated?
Yeah. So that's one part that we don't look at is the bacteria counts. Just for the fact that that's dealt with through interior health. So anything drinking water related is interior health, and then anything with aquatic health is the MOE. But there has been work done at the public beaches where counts have been done, and things have been generally quite low. So I never recommend taking straight drinking water without any sort of treatment at all. That's just me coming from Ontario, where lakes and streams usually aren't the best quality in southern Ontario. So I don't recommend it, but there likely aren't high counts of fecal bacteria, which will cause problems. But again, I don't necessarily know for sure, and it'll be naturally higher in the nearshore areas, whereas in the center of the lake, you likely won't find much at all.
Maybe I could follow up on that just for a second, because I think a lot of people are interested in that part of it. Interior Health was invited, however, they didn't attend. So how do we as a community get them to maybe do some testing on Christina Lake and then publish those results? How do we do that? Can you give us some?
The only way that I can think of is to pester them, and honestly, it works because they're so if we're not looking at drinking water and if there was an algal bloom in a lake, I wouldn't know about it unless somebody called or sent an email, and it's the same with that organization as well. So the squeaky wheel does get degrees, so you have to pester people, email, call. If there are complaints, people have to follow up with it. So that's just part of our mandate, and I know it is part of their mandate as well. So if they don't know that there is a potential problem, they likely won't have funding to actually go out and start a program. So that's the only. They're probably going to kill me if they hear about it.
No, that's fine. I actually know that, and we have pestered a great deal.
Yeah.
However, to date, we have not gotten any results.
Yeah, Leslie Shelley, when she was interior health, Leslie Shelley, that used to be the interior health person here, used to come out and do the rec sites, and the basic parameters were anybody that kind of goes to some of these rec areas or resorts that there's an average of 100 people a day at that site. That's where they would go. So it would be the public beach, the day-use beach on the south end. It would be Shooley's Resort, Kingsley, different areas like that. Then the program stopped for a few years. And then we did actually do some pestering with our new person here. And she came to one of the meetings and had some results, but they weren't still up to standard. They weren't going to all the sites that had heavy usage. And then they were only going once a month. Well, that's twice, right? Like for July once and August once. So, yeah, more people phone in. Maybe we can push Interior Health Authority to get the program back.
I just wanted to make that clear so that thank you very much. That information is unbelievable. I think the lady at the very back had a question.
My question actually is related to Ken's, because in the past, the Ministry of Environment reports have shown that there's increased eutrophication at the south end compared to the north end. And I'm wondering if you've noticed any long-term trends.
That is generally true, and the main reason for that, it partly is, well, the two reasons. One reason is that North End is primarily park, and a lot of it's undeveloped. And the south, there are quite a few residences, and just when you have that many people and that much development, things will be naturally higher. The other thing is that the south basin is shallower, and I'm not sure on the average depth, but the maximum depth only goes down to, I believe, 25 meters, maybe 26 at its deepest there. So when you have less volume and the same amount of nutrients coming in, things will be slightly higher. So I don't necessarily think there's been a negative downswing to the south basin compared to the north. I think a lot of it happens with natural fluctuations, and what if the results from the paraphyte north come when they do come back, I will have to have a look at that because it hasn't been done in 5 years. But from the data that was done in 2006 and when it was analyzed, there wasn't any significant difference between the north basin and the south basin as far as that nearshore area zone is concerned. So water quality generally is very similar for the two basins.
Just related to that, I'm just wondering what the baseline is, because it's interesting. I mean, that could be a potential baseline, right? As the north is more pristine, because it's interesting to look at what happens yearly, and yearly, yeah, maybe it's a little bit worse, but what's really interesting is what's going on over the long term compared to a baseline.
Yeah. Well, so the baseline work that we have is really from that early work that was done 30 years ago. So those early samples, but it is really kind of limited to a few parameters. Like the nutrients are really the kind of key driver, and those have been done. And they started out low, but that was kind of in a climatic low period, and then things went up and came back down, and gone up and come back down, and now they're on the way up again. So I really do think a lot of the changes that are going on are more natural as opposed to development influence.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. And please be aware that Mike does have his PhD. We are very, very fortunate to have you here presenting to us today. Thank you very much.